Welcome to Geek Therapy Radio. You've got your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger. What a doozy it has been to try to upload podcasts to Geek Therapy Radio. So, obviously, if you've been paying attention, I haven't published an episode since December 3rd. As of recording right now, it is late January, so it is almost 2 months between episodes. It's been like a month and 3 weeks since the last time I uploaded a podcast. That doesn't mean that I haven't recorded podcasts. I have recorded a half dozen podcasts, but that never got published. I'm trying to find the rhythm. I'm trying to find the space in my life currently to record, not just record podcasts, but publish them. Like I said, I've recorded them, but they never got published. What happens is that I record them. I've been recording them before work in my car. So I'll get to work, I'll park in the parking garage, and I'll just have my DJI mic on the sun visor, and I will let it rip and record the show. But usually I don't even get around to editing the show. I record it before work, then all of work happens, and then I pick up my children from school, and life happens, and by the end of the day, it's only when I'm in bed that I remember, and I'm exhausted, that I remember, oh, I never edited that episode. I recorded it, but I never edited it. Sometimes I did edit it, and then something happens, and I gotta put it away or save the session or whatever. It never gets exported, but it never gets published. So there are 4 or 5 episodes in the bank. And also what happens is once I have enough distance from recording it, I have time to doubt myself. I have time to doubt the upload. So yeah, do I really want to upload that? After a day or two, or what happens to me like a week later, I'm like, nah, I don't want to upload that. Usually it's because I was talking about something relatively topical. For instance, the DJI Flip that came out 2 or 3 weeks ago. I talked about that, never uploaded that episode. Stuff happened, and I just never uploaded that episode. So I'm trying to figure it out. So right now, I have less than 30 minutes before my work meeting. It is Monday morning. It is 9:35 in the morning, and I have a meeting at 10 a.m. So I'm trying to fit it in here, but I'm sitting at my desk. I'm sitting in the Geek Cave, in the studio. I'm recording through my MXLV67G, going through my nice signal chain. By the way, I've got my preamp right now set to 100% tube. I've got the Universal Audio 4710D. So right now I have it in full tube mode. So what you are listening to is the sweet vacuum tube of my Universal Audio microphone interface, and I'm recording into my 16-inch MacBook Pro with the M1 Pro chip in it. Why am I recording into the M1 MacBook right now? Well, this is the meat and potatoes of this podcast I think I wanted to get into. My albatross hanging around my neck for the past, 2 or 3 weeks at least has been the rebuilding of Demon's Whisper. I think that's what I called my main desktop PC. It currently has the Ryzen 5950X. That's 16 cores, 32 threads. It's the most powerful chip that ever became available for the AM4 platform. The motherboard is an MSI Gaming Plus whatever. And of course I have the 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM in there, and the RTX 3090 rounding things out for the GPU. It's a beast mode computer. AM4, AMD has moved on to AM5, but this AM4, it's no slouch. The problem is that I have been getting non-stop BSODs, blue screens of death. The computer just shuts down, restarts, no warning. It says, what is the code I get? It's like unprocessable. What is it? Non-executable command. Like, it's something. It's ridiculous. Over and over and over again. I have swapped SSDs. I thought maybe it's one of the SSDs that's starting to crap out. Nope. I have swapped SSDs. I have reinstalled Windows. I have done everything. One stick of RAM, I have rearranged the RAM slots. I have redone thermal paste on the CPU. I have done everything to this PC to try to get it to run properly. So as I was recording this podcast, I got 5 minutes into recording the podcast, blue screen of death. And I said, oh no, what a bummer. Because I had edited on the rig a few days ago. It was running for 7 or 8 hours, no problem at all. And I even told my wife, hey, I was using my computer yesterday and it ran for 7 or 8 hours. It did not shut down, no errors. I was able to edit a couple of videos on it, a couple short videos, and it worked out just fine. So hopefully, double fingers crossed, I'm out of the woods with this computer, because we had discussed earlier, I was told my wife earlier, I said, if I can't get this, you're not going to like my answer if I can't get this computer running properly, because the remedy to having a full-fledged desktop PC, a beast mode PC for me, editing rig, is that I'm going to have to go ahead and upgrade to the AM5 platform. Everything inside of me, every geek fiber of my being is like, yes, I want to do that. Of course I want to upgrade. I built this AM4 PC originally with the 3900X, the 12-core, 24-thread processor. I didn't even have my RTX 3090. I was still rocking a GTX 980 in it. So I built this thing 2018, something like that. Along the line, I got the 5950X because it was on sale. It was like $300 is when I got the 5950X in here. But recently, it's been nothing but blue screens of death. I cannot, for the life of me, figure it out. And what I told Sarah is if I can't figure this out, you're not going to like the answer, because it means I have to upgrade to basically build a new PC, which in my mind, I can justify since like I mentioned, I had built this in around 2017, 2018. So it is 2025 now. I have used this computer for at least 5 or 6, maybe 7 years. And if you've been listening to Geek Therapy Radio, you know that for kind of high-end or flagship devices in my life, I like to go at least 2 to 3 years before upgrading for a number of reasons. The tick-tock nature of new hardware, and by the time I upgrade, I want it to be a sizable, noticeable improvement, not just a kind of iterative generational improvement. So every geek bone in my body wants to upgrade to AM5. Financially, it'd be okay to do that, but I don't. The 5950X is still a super powerful chip. I don't want to upgrade if I don't need to upgrade, but I'm at the point now why I'm leaning towards eventually upgrading. I'm not going to be hurt for doing work, because obviously I'm recording this podcast now on my 16-inch MacBook Pro. I've got my 17.3-inch Windows PC over here, the Aorus 17H, with the, what is the in here? The i7 13800K. I forget what it is. It's like 22 threads, 20 threads. It's a beast. RTX 4080, laptop RTX 4080 in here, 64 gigs of DDR5 RAM. I am not hurting for computers to do the job, but I always like to have my no compromises, full-on beast mode desktop PC for when I need to do real work and I don't want to compromise anything. That is where I usually have in my life, in my stable, a demonically powered PC. It's just so super powerful. But right now, that PC for me is not acting up. And I'm at the point now where here's this, because you might be saying this to yourself. Well, Johnny, it sounds like your motherboard or your power supply or something like that's going out. I think it's the motherboard. I don't think it's the power supply, because I've used the power supply. It's just not the power supply. It's something else. So you might be thinking, well, maybe the 5950X is just a bump chip. Maybe get another 5950X. Maybe get another motherboard. It's probably a motherboard issue. If you've been swapping out hard drives and you've reinstalled Windows and nothing's, and you've reseated RAM and checked each RAM stick, maybe it's just the motherboard is finally starting to crap out. The troubleshooting at this point now costs money. So if I were to buy another motherboard, that's an easy $200 right there. If I was to buy another 5950X, if I was chasing this, going down this rabbit trail of trying to keep this desktop PC alive, I would wind up spending hundreds of dollars anyways. That is one reason why I'm leaning towards, well, if I'm going to be spending money on this procedure, if I'm going to be spending money on this hardware, I might as well jump to the new platform, jump to AM5 socket, jump to DDR5 RAM, and jump to, if I was going to rebuild a PC right now, it's going to be I have in my shopping cart, Amazon cart, say, or it's in a wish list or whatever, the 7950X, which is also 16 cores, 32 threads. There's the 9950X, that is the more powerful the latest version of their 16 core, 32 thread processor. It costs like $100 more than the 7950X, but the improvement, the power improvement, the performance improvement is not enough to justify the cost increase. In fact, the 7950X is faster in some cases. It's got a higher, I think it's a higher core speed. Does it have a higher boost speed? It doesn't. It's iterative. Like the jump between 7950X and 9950X is so minuscule in any real world use versus a 5950X to the 7950X. That's like a 40% gain in performance. It's probably a little bit even more than that. It's at least 30% gain overall. 7950X versus the older 5950X on the older platform. It's I think, what is it? 7950X is now on Zen 4 or Zen 5. 5950X was Zen 3. It's the architecture of AMD's processors. 7950X is, I want to say it's around $500 right now versus the 9950X was around $600 or $700, and the prices fluctuate. So it doesn't matter what I say here on this podcast. By the time you go look at how much it is in US dollars, whatever, it'll have fluctuated, but it's around that ballpark. So in my cart right now, I have not obviously pulled the trigger on it. This is the build that I'm looking at. And remember, one of the appeals for me and for a lot of other PC enthusiasts is that you get to reuse a whole lot of components in a PC build. So you're not building completely from scratch. Really, I just need 3 components to build a brand new PC. One of the benefits of this is really cool for anybody who doesn't know this already. One of the perks of going from AM4, if you're talking about AMD sockets, one of the perks of going from AM4 to AM5 is that all your air cooling, all your liquid cooling, all the socket coolers from AM4 are still compatible with AM5. You don't have to buy new hardware. You don't have to buy new brackets. You don't have to buy any adapters or anything to put your, for instance, I've got a giant Noctua NH14, like what? It's a giant air cooler that is on my AM4 platform right now, cooling the 5950X, cooling it wonderfully, by the way. But I can take that cooler, which was not the cheapest cooler, it's over $100, and I can use that now on the 7950X on the AM5 socket. So I can pull my air cooler over, no problem. Obviously, I can reuse my rack mount PC case that I like to keep my desktop in. That RTX 3090, I don't have to buy a new graphics card. I can just bring my RTX 3090 over to the new. So, and even the power supply, I've still got a Corsair 750 watt modular power supply. It's a tank. It's friggin' awesome. Like, I've got a lot of awesome hardware that I can reuse. I don't have to spend $1,000 more on getting all the other components you need. Not 1,000, maybe that's being a little wishful, but hundreds of dollars easy on kind of all the extra components needed for a PC build. So all I need to upgrade, and granted, these are the the meat and potatoes of any PC. First, I need an AM5 motherboard. I think it's on the X870 is what I'm looking for. I think 870 is the chipset, the current top of the line chipset for AMD platform. So that's going to be around $200, $250 for that motherboard, for AM5 motherboard. The other part of this trifecta that you need is RAM. DDR4 RAM is not compatible in a DDR5 slot, so I would need to get new RAM and I would need to get a new processor. So motherboard, RAM, and processor. I've got everything else that I need for this build. I just need those three main components. That X870 motherboard, the Ryzen 9 7950X 16-core 32-thread processor, and then I'm probably going to go all out on the RAM, probably 192 gigabyte kit of DDR5. I may save a couple bucks and just do, and just quote unquote air quotes, do like 128 gigs or just keep it at 64 gigs of RAM. But part of me is like, dude, you don't build a new desktop but once every 5 to 7 years. Why not just do it once instead of continuing to upgrade? Just make the baller PC you want right now. Use it as an excuse to go carte blanche and build the friggin' rig that you need. I will draw the line at graphics card. RTX 3090 with 24 gigs of VRAM is still a monster. And here's a slight little tangent on that, because the RTX 5000 series it's all the rage right now, and there's a little bit of controversy surrounding the 5000 series with how NVIDIA, all the frame gen and everything. Look, you can run Cyberpunk at 240 frames per second or whatever it is at 4K because we're using AI to generate like 3 or 4 frames between each frame. So wowie zowie, look at these performance increases. Look at the frame rate increases versus 4000 series to 5000 series. Well, that's firmware, that's software. NVIDIA could release DLSS 4, I think we're on right now, DLSS 4, which allows that frame gen allows the AI to introduce these frames between real frame, whatever. You could easily release that in a driver update for the 3000 series cards. A 3090 could run DLSS 4. The 4000, a 4090 could run DLSS 4, like a 4080, 4070, 4060, 3090, 3080, 3060, all of that, all the previous generations, not all the previous generations, but the last 2 at least generations of NVIDIA graphics cards could run DLSS 4. All they have to do is release it in a firmware update in the next driver update that comes down the pipe. They could. It's just a driver issue. That's all it is. But they want you to buy, obviously, the new 5000 series of cards and say you can only get DLSS 4 on the 5000 series. Well, that's just because you're not releasing it for the 4000 series. That's just because you're not including it in the driver updates for the 3000 series. So I am not completely convinced personally. Now, if I had infinite money, if someone said, here, Johnny, here's $2,000 or whatever, and you have to spend it on a graphics card, of course I'm going to do a 5090. I think it's got 32 gigs of VRAM. Not that what I do would ever come close to saturating 32 gigs of DDR7 whatever VRAM. But like, if I just had infinite money, someone say, hey, here, take this 5090. Hey kid, you want a 5090? Sure, I'll take a 5090. But the reality is, to get back to the original point of this tangent, is if you're after 4K ultra settings, 60 frames a second gaming, 4K 60 without frame gen, without any sort of artificial frame generation going on, if you just want the actual graphics card to pump out 4K 60 frames a second at ultra settings, the RTX 3090 does that. So I don't game all the time on my computer, but every once in a while I'll fire up Doom and I'll crank everything to absolute nightmare ultra settings, 4K 60 frame. I'll cap it at 60 frames a second. It looks gorgeous. The graphics card's not breaking the 3090 is not breaking a sweat to run 60 frames of 4K per second without any AI assistance. So a lot of us, if you're sitting on a 3000 series card and you are gaming at 4K 60, it's like, well, why would I spend $2,000 on a 5090 to game at 4K 60? Maybe you could do 4K 120 on some games. You absolutely do that if you dial down settings. If that's what you're after, fine. But I think most people are after that. The Goldilocks zone right now in 2025, in my opinion, just my opinion as host of Geek Therapy Radio, the Goldilocks zone for gaming right now is 4K 60. It's still 4K 60 is that perfect Goldilocks point of gaming. And the 3090 does that. The 3080 does that to a large extent. Even the 3070, if you tweak settings, you can be gaming in 4K 60. There's a lot of cards. If you go down that rabbit trail, you can dial back settings in a lot of games and get 4K 60 with a lot of lower end cards. Like you can do 4K 60 in esports easily with probably a 2000 series NVIDIA card in the equivalent AMD. But from where I'm sitting, 24 gigs of VRAM for my video editing, and then I can play games at 4K 60 just without frame gen with the 3090. I personally have no incentive to shell out $2,000 or whatever close to that for an RTX 5090. So that's where I'm at. So if I build a new PC, new motherboard, new RAM kit for DDR5, and then the AM5 socket 7950X. That's kind of where I'm leaning. Although at the last second, I might pull the trigger on the 9950X just because, if I'm building, I might as well. But it's such a... Here's why I'm sitting on the 7950X as the processor of choice right now. Because, the next generation of AM5 chip, AMD might have a 20-core, 40-thread processor. I don't know, somewhere. I've not heard any. I've not seen the roadmap on what CPUs AMD is set to release over the coming years. But I don't want to buy the absolute latest offering from AMD now, only to have the 10 series, the 10, 5, 50, whatever, come out and be 50% faster, 50% better, more performance than the 9950. I'm going to my theory is save a buck now on the 7950, which is no slouch at all, the 7950X. And then maybe a few more generations of AM5 come out where I say, okay, now $700 for a new CPU makes sense if it's this generational increase over the last gen or whatever. So new motherboard, new RAM, new CPU. That's where I'm at. I have not pulled the trigger on anything yet. My heart sank when I began to record this episode of Geek Therapy Radio on my 5950X build, having been teased a few days before with 7 to 8 hour editing session with no hiccups, no problems, only to get 5 minutes into this recording and have the PC crash BSOD on me again. When you think that's the worst. When you get hopeful that you think you're out of the woods for some problem, like some bane of your existence, computer issue in this case, and then all of a sudden it happens again, and you're like, dang it, why did you tease me the other day? So that's where I'm at right now. Maybe I'll spare this. I got a couple minutes left. My home theater PC downstairs, I've got the graphics card is the RTX A2000, which is low profile. It's bus powered, 6 gigabytes of RAM. There's a 12 gigabyte variant that costs way too much money for what I was going to use it for. But the RTX A2000, single slot half height, double 2 slot half height. It's in my Silverstone HT PC case downstairs, plugged into our 65-inch OLED TV. The processor in there is my old 3900X 12 core 24 thread, and it's got 32 gigs of dual channel DDR4 RAM. It's an absolute baller. It's not going to game 4K 60 frames a second, in like Microsoft Flight Simulator or Doom. I haven't actually tested Doom. Maybe it can do 4K 60 with Doom, especially if you dial back some settings. But it is an awesome little small form factor gaming PC that I have hooked up to the living room, and I can sit there on the couch even with the wireless mouse and keyboard and actually do some video editing work on it. It is 32 gigs of RAM. Like I said, 32 gigs of RAM, 12 core, 24 thread processor, and then that RTX A2000 graphics card. 75 watts, I think, is the max from the bus. There's no power supply going to it. It is completely bus powered. It's a little energy efficient gaming rig that I have downstairs. That I messed that up myself. I was trying to put a 5900 process, not a 5900X, just a 5900 processor in there. And boy, howdy, did the TPM and FTPM and all this and BitLock and all that stuff just threw me fits. And I was going through BIOS update after BIOS flash. Which BIOS is going to just be compatible with this? I erased the NVMEs on there. I was like, I'm just going to reinstall Windows. It wouldn't let me do it. So I pulled out the 5900 and put in my old 3900X. That's the most first world problem I have ever mentioned on Geek Therapy Radio. But right now it's running smooth. 3900X, mini ITX motherboard, 32 gigs of RAM, that RTX A2000 6GB graphics card, bus powered graphics card. I have no problems with that computer. That computer is just no problems at all right now. That's it. I just wanted to tell you my kind of computer woes in the Albatross, and probably not by the next episode. I'm not going to have a new desktop build, but there may be progress on that front. I don't know. Kids are expensive. So every time I know that every time I think of pulling the trigger on this, I'm going to be like, I have to get my wisdom teeth out. I've got 3 more wisdom teeth in my head. One of them is causing me problems. It kept me up last night, 3 a.m. I was looking around for Advil. So you got some money coming down the pipe. Actually, money going out of the pipe. And when am I going to pull the trigger on this? Because it's going to be over $1,000 easy just to build this new desktop PC. I got to reprice it. Obviously, the 500, 200, that's 700, and then it's probably like 200. No, actually, 192 gig RAM kit, that's like $400. So whatever, it's some money. It's not a priority. Like I said, I've got other obviously machines to keep me working, but anyways, that's what's going on in my life. If you want to hear me more often, I at least once a month minimum, I release a new episode of the Beyond Bones podcast. I host the Beyond Bones podcast for the Houston Museum of Natural Science. So if you want to hear me at least once a month on a regular schedule, I pepper in more podcasts over there between the monthly releases, but I have a monthly schedule. I release one every month. I try for the first of the month every month to release a new podcast on the HMNS Beyond Bones podcast. I'll include the link in this description, but if you just want to search for the HMNS Beyond Bones podcast in whatever you're listening to this podcast on, just look for the purple color scheme, and that's the most modern version of the Beyond Bones podcast, and that's how you can hear me a lot more often. I got to go to my meeting right now, so thank you so much for listening to Geek Therapy Radio. You are worthy of love, you're worthy of giving love, you're worthy of receiving love, and you're worthy of your own self-respect. Thank you so much for listening. Take care.